Ever wonder how people were doing multiplication like centuries ago?
Mm?
We're about to take a trip back in time to ancient India for that. And our vehicle, a children's math textbook.
Interesting. I'm curious to see how math can give us a window into a different culture.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
children's textbook. With its stories and exercises, it must offer a really unique perspective.
I think so too, yeah. Especially when it's set in a time period so far in the past.
Right.
We'll be hanging out with characters like Manoratnam. He's a royal cashier, and his kids, Bella and Banu, are always up for a good math challenge.
I love it. So their stories will uncover some of that ingenuity of ancient Indian mathematics
Yeah,
and how it was used in practical situations.
exactly. So, okay, let's just jump right in with Bella's multiplication method.
Okay.
Say you want to multiply 65 by 31.
Okay.
But instead of the way we all learned, Bella's method is to break down that 31 into 30 plus 1,
Right.
and then multiply 65 by each part and add those results.
Oh, how interesting.
I know. So different from how we were taught.
It is, yeah. I mean, at its core, it's really just the distributive property in action.
Right.
It just highlights how resourceful those ancient Indian mathematicians were. I mean, to break down these problems into smaller, manageable steps,
Yeah. It really makes you realize that there's not just one right way to solve a math problem, which I kind of love.
Right, yeah.
It's refreshing. Plus, this textbook uses such relatable examples like figuring out people's salaries, which, would have been Manoratnam's job as the royal cashier.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And those little examples, they give us that glimpse into the historical context. We're
Right.
learning about, horse riders, ministers, even a special cook named Shantaram.
Oh, cool.
It really paints a picture of what life was like back then.
Yeah. Speaking of Shantaram, the book actually tells us how much he makes. His daily pay is 165.
Okay.
Not sure what the currency would have been,
Mm.
but it walked you through figuring out his earnings for a whole month or even a whole year.
Ooh, that's a really clever way to illustrate how multiplication can be used to extrapolate from, a smaller unit of time to a larger one.
Yeah.
Makes it much more practical and relatable.
I agree. And the real life applications just don't stop. Like, we're talking about estimating water consumption for an entire community, figuring out how many times a heart beats in a day,
Wow.
and even calculating how much milk a baby elephant drinks.
Oh, wow.
I know.
These examples are fantastic because they help us grasp this concept of scale,
Yeah.
working with large numbers in a way that you can really visualize.
Yeah, this example really puts into perspective the incredible scale of the natural world. The book says that a baby blue whale can drink about 200 liters of milk every single day.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
It is.
It makes you wonder how much milk your own family goes through, in a week or even a month.
That's a good point. Okay, now shifting gears a bit, there's this really intriguing story about Karunya. He's a landowner who buys 3 fields of different sizes. So while Shantaram's story showed a fair compensation, this tale of Karunya reveals how math can expose, when things aren't so fair, some economic injustices.
Interesting.
I know.
How so?
Well, the book walks us through calculating the area of each of his fields and then the total cost using, geometry and multiplication.
Uh-huh.
But it turns out that Karunya is paying his workers less than the minimum wage, which brings up some, ethical concerns.
It's interesting how the math can be used not only to, just calculate, but also to analyze and critique those systems.
It makes you really think about the responsibility that comes with having that mathematical knowledge, right?
Yeah.
It really does. But moving on, this textbook also gets into division,
Okay.
and it does it in a way that really highlights how, people learn differently.
Right.
There's a scenario about a school picnic where they're trying to figure out how many buses to hire.
Okay.
And we see these 2 students, Iru and Skrini,
Okay.
and they each have their own way of solving the division problem. So Eru, he likes to use repeated subtraction, just breaking down the total number of students step by step.
Right.
But Srini, he's more visual. He likes to group the students together to figure out how many buses they'll need.
I see. So it's like, are you a visual learner or do you learn better sequentially?
Yeah. And the cool thing is, the book emphasizes that both methods are totally valid.
Of course. Yeah.
It's just like how some people are visual learners while others connect better with those step-by-step instructions, right?
Totally.
And it's so cool that a math textbook actually acknowledges those different learning styles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It encourages that, that flexibility,
Right.
that there's not always just one right way to approach a problem,
Exactly.
especially in math.
Exactly. And speaking of different approaches, the book also points out a really common division mistake
Uh-oh.
that I'm sure we've all made at some point, forgetting about the remainder.
Oh, yes, the remainders. Yeah, it's so easy to just, like, not even think about them at all.
Yeah, right. It's easy to overlook those leftovers, but they can be important, especially in real-life situations.
For sure.
Like, the book gives an example of dividing pencils among students, and you might end up with an extra pencil or two at the end.
Exactly, yeah.
So it reminds you to really pay attention to those remainders and think about what they actually represent in the context of the problem.
It's about understanding, like, what the math actually means, not just how to do it.
Totally. And speaking of real-life applications, there's this story about Harisharan, and he's trying to divide his wealth equally amongst his sons.
Okay, inheritance, yeah.
Exactly. And it shows how division comes into play there.
Right, which you want to make sure you're getting right.
Exactly. Accuracy is super important there.
Yeah.
But you know what I really appreciate about this textbook? It's not afraid to show that even, like, smart people make mistakes.
Right.
In the story, one of Harisharan's sons, he gets the calculation wrong at first.
Oh.
And his dad has to point out the error.
I love that. Because we all make mistakes.
Exactly. Everyone messes up sometimes.
And it's all part of the learning process.
Right. Learning from our mistakes, that's how we get better.
Totally.
Okay, but besides the stories and the examples, there were these fun with multiplication sections that I thought were so cool.
Oh, fun.
There were like little brain teasers that make you just want to play around with numbers more.
That's great. Yeah, it just emphasizes that math can be really engaging.
I agree.
Even a little bit mysterious.
Right. Like one of them showed how if you keep adding a digit to a sequence and multiplying by 9,
Yeah.
the results make this really cool pattern. It feels almost like magic.
It's like those hidden patterns in numbers. I love that.
Me too. And then there's a tricks with your age section that I won't spoil,
Okay.
but I'm definitely trying that one out later.
That's awesome.
But before we go down the rabbit hole of math fun, there's
Yeah.
just one more part of the book that I wanted to mention. They had these make the best story problem sections. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, it's like a little challenge for your brain.
So they give you like a scenario or something.
Yeah. Like imagine a shopkeeper with all these boxes of fruit.
Okay.
And then they give you different math questions you could ask about it.
And you have to figure out the best one.
Exactly. It's not just about doing the math, but thinking critically about how it actually applies to the situation.
I love that. It encourages you to really analyze,
It's true. It's like a mini workout for your problem-solving skills.
Right. You're really thinking about it.
Yeah.
So, as we kind of wrap up our look at this ancient Indian math textbook,
Yeah.
it's so much more than just memorizing formulas and things like that.
Right.
It's got those relatable stories.
Yeah.
It's got different ways of doing the math, those algorithms.
Right.
And then it connects it to those real-world situations, and it even makes it fun.
Yeah. It really does. It's like they found a way to make learning math feel like an adventure.
Which I think is really cool. And, one thing I really appreciated was just seeing how many different ways there are to approach these problems.
Yeah, and those ancient approaches, I mean, they're not just like, historical relics or something.
Yeah.
They still have so much to teach us today.
Exactly.
Being okay with different problem-solving methods, connecting math to things we actually experience in our lives,
Yeah.
thinking critically about things.
Right.
These are all things that are valuable no matter what time period you're in.
It makes you think about what other, mathematical treasures might be out there,
Wow.
just hidden in different cultures.
Wouldn't that be amazing to find out?
Right. Like, how would our own understanding of math be different if we had been introduced to these different approaches when we were younger?
Oh, that's such an interesting question.
I know. Well, folks, that's our deep dive into the world of ancient Indian math.
Fascinating stuff.
We hope you've enjoyed this journey as much as we have, and maybe you'll even try out some of those ancient multiplication tricks yourself.